Hi, Pat Battle with Living Web Farms, back with another episode of our Resilience Daily series, which we're doing in collaboration with the Organic Grower School. And right now we're going to talk about the need to start plants for the fall. I know that's kind of a terrifying concept since we're all just trying to get the spring plants in, get the tomatoes tied up, keep the weeds at a dull roar, begin to handle the size of the harvest that's coming in. But if you want a spectacular fall garden, there's a bunch of plants you need to be starting in the immediate future. And so in order to start them, you have to have potting soil. And sadly, we used to be able to reliably buy a couple of different brands of excellent potting soil, but like many things, the succession of leadership in those companies has changed and their quality has changed too, and I can't recommend them anymore. I'm not going to speak to any particular company, but we're finding we have to make our own potting soil or be in cooperation with other people who are making their own potting soil. We're not able to source it easily. So there's a wonderful recipe which you can write down right now, or you can go to ATTRA, Applied Technology Transfer to Rural Areas. That's a government-funded organization that is dedicated to giving all of the resources we need to a sustainable rural life. I couldn't recommend this resource more, and I found this original recipe on their website. It's real simple. It's 2 parts of perlite or vermiculite, okay? And you want to know that perlite is quite dusty. It's one of those nuisance dust we say, but a nuisance dust now may turn out to be a future cancer causer later. So I highly recommend you not allow that dust to rise, and you simply do that by pouring some water on it. That's no big deal to do because you need to hydrate the next ingredient, which is coir. This is the substitute for peat that comes from coconut hulls. Okay, and that also is going to need to be hydrated. It is easier to hydrate than peat and more sustainable. It's got its own problems, but it's more sustainable than peat anyways. And you just wet that ahead of time and it makes the whole process easier later on. So there's our 2 parts of peat substitute, coir, and perlite we're using. It could be vermiculite or it could be a combination of the 2. And then here's the 1 part of compost. You see it's only half full. Okay, and you want a good compost, and that's a tough row to hoe around here also. Because we don't have good tipping fee structures, there's not a lot of really good compost being made. There are a few sources and they're not terrible. And just, go ahead and get them and try them and see how your plants do. But if you can't easily source it, I have gotten away with buying the available at every good garden center, the composted cow manure that comes in a bag, which by the way has a fair amount of sand adulterating it, but it still works. That's very bacterial. And then also the mushroom compost, which is not fungal in a way we want it to be, but it still adds diversity, and the 2 textures work better, and those 2 together will get you decent seedlings. You have to mix everything very, very well. I can't emphasize that enough. If you don't mix this stuff well, you will have very disappointing results. So, also, this is an add-on that's not on the ATTRA webpage, okay? This is rock dust. This is highly paramagnetic rock dust that our friend John Nilsson has searched out and puts in his products, his Char-Grow products, and we go in on it and buy it with him. And it's very expensive as far as rock dust goes. We're paying someplace a little over $300 for a ton of this, and that's very expensive rock dust. It's usually more like $20 a ton plus shipping. And part of why it's so expensive is the most paramagnetic rock dust is not close by, so it's being shipped from far away. Anyway, you can add any amount of this to your potting soil, it'll improve it. I can get away with adding this much, and that means it's a way that I can get the rock dust out onto the farm, and it has an immediate impact on my seedlings. So I'm going to put this much in. It'll make it drain better and won't have much of another more effect than that. I guess I wouldn't say any. If you added as much as the coir, you might make way too heavy of potting soil. So you can add, let's say, up to 1/8 of what you're doing of rock dust. Okay, so another trick is when you're mixing, always put your lightest materials on the bottom. So the perlite's the lightest, the coir is the second lightest. It's a lot heavier now that I watered it though. Okay, then the compost, and then the rock dust, which is the heaviest. This doesn't matter at all for this small amount, but if you're trying to do a wheelbarrow full, you'll find it a lot easier. And of course you can substitute peat for the core. We're using the core, but you can use peat. And that's C-O-I-R, not C-O-R-E. You also could play with very well sifted, very completely finished leaf mold. We showed you leaf mold in a previous video. We've used up our best leaf mold. The leaf mold we showed you wouldn't work well for potting soil. But if you have a pile of really aged, couple years old leaf mold and you sifted it well, you could substitute that for the core. And that would be the most sustainable. And I mentioned the core has some other issues. The way it's produced is not very just. There's a lot of child labor, and it's very dangerous how they do it. The workers are basically taking coconuts and holding them up to spinning tires with nails in them. Now maybe there's other methods, but I learned this from a soil making company, somebody who toured a core production site. So they're all just like very poor people who are holding coconut hulls up to tires that are spinning that have nails sticking out. And of course it's very easy for your hands to get caught in those nails. And then their kids are carrying the heavy bags up onto the ships and loading them. So it's not a pretty picture, but at least you're not mining a non-renewable resource and contributing to climate change, and those people do need the work. It's a complex world fraught with a lot of injustice. So if you can get the leaf mold and use that, that would be ideal. So that's a really well mixed potting soil now. If you don't think your compost is very good, could amend this with something like blood meal, which is a real slow release nitrogen source. Be warned, you want to mix that with your driest ingredient first, not wet it at all, because it's hygroscopic. That is, it's attractive to wetness, and it'll go and not release from the wettest spots of whatever you have, and then you'll have these concentrations of blood meal, which is really high salt, and those high salts will inhibit germination. So if you're going to use an amendment like blood meal, you want to make sure it's mixed thoroughly into your dry ingredients very, very well before you add anything moist. In the industry, they actually have it dribbled out on a conveyor belt, so it's dribbled out in a very precise way. And if they don't do that, then we get poor germination, which we've been seeing a lot of in potting soils lately. So you've got your potting soil. You would put it in any number of cells, either a 72 or a 50 or even an 18, which is over here, depending on what size plants you want. We use a lot of the 128s. That's a 128 over here. This is actually an ideal size for large scale production. Actually, this one right here. You just get a lot of plants, and they're actually still big enough. That guy come out without tearing it up. Nah, it's not gonna. Anyways, there's a good enough size root ball that it's going to get in the ground and not need a lot of care, and that's important. So 128 is a favorite for the farms. A major producer of candy roaster seed, Scott Paquin, who doesn't live around here anymore, was a musician. He said, I want to start a band that farmers can attend. I'm going to call it the 128s. Every farmer would get that. But a lot more often for a home grower, a 72 is a better size. You don't need as many plants, and it gives you an even better root ball. The thing is, if you're in a hurry and don't have a lot of space, the 128s are going to be ready sooner. They're not going to do as well if you don't take care of them as these will, but they'll do well enough. So why I wanted to show you this today is because it is time to start the long season brassicas, okay? The long season cauliflowers, and these are like 85-day plants, right? So that's almost 90 days, which is going to put us into the middle of September. So you want to start them now and then do successions for another month or so. So you have a succession of these long season cabbages and cauliflowers coming in. And usually 90 days, it's more than that, because it's you get some of a bump from starting them ahead of time, but you don't think that, oh, I started them on, today's June 15th, I think, or 16th or something. Who knows?
17th.
17th, I'm way behind. Anyway, you start them on June 15th. That doesn't mean the 90 days clock starts from then. It means it's probably more like 75 days or 80 days from when they go in the ground, which is going to be about 3 to 4 weeks from now. So basically starting them now means they'll be ready sometime in October, which is great because the cool weather makes them tastier and do better. And you'll have a window. You can keep starting these for another 3 weeks or so. Then you should probably give up on the long season ones and move to the shorter season broccolis and cauliflowers. There are broccolis and cauliflowers that come in anywhere from 50 some days to 85 to 90 days. And there's a big advantage to those longer season ones. They tend to be bigger, not surprising. And they tend to be a little more resistant to the travails of the heat of summer and stuff. So they're well worth starting, but you need to start them now. Another one you really need to start now is Brussels sprouts. You can once again start those later. We do every year because we're not on top of it. And we get pretty decent Brussels sprouts, but if you want those really big Brussels sprouts in the store, start those Brussels sprouts today. You know, and I've seen people give instructions to start them in September. That's a lost cause. It's not going to happen. You know, the other final one you want to start is the radicchios. The radicchios love to grow in the cool weather. They're long season. If you start them now, they will be perfect to go out in the ground in early July, and they'll come in sometime in mid-October to early November, and they'll have that cold. You get all that rich color, the deep, rich flavors. Yes, a little bit of bitterness, but they won't be nearly as bitter because they matured in the cool weather. So that's the kind of stuff to start right now. We'll be talking about more stuff to start in the near future. And that's it for this version. Happy planting. I know it's a big load to start a fall garden when you don't have your spring garden finished, let alone your summer garden weeded out and trellised up, but that's farming and gardening. And we'll talk to you next time. Remember to go to our Instagram at Living Web Farms.